Alright, so we just wanted to put together a tool list for you guys so you can see exactly what we used and exactly what you need to do it yourself. So we'll just go through each tool that we used. So first is going to be like a PB blaster or some sort of lubricant, WD-40. There are a lot of tight nuts and bolts on there, so you definitely want something to help loosen them up a little bit. So that was very useful. Next is not a necessity, but it was definitely very, very helpful. It's a 3/8 inch impact wrench. Very, very nice to have. This probably cut the time in half that it would have taken us.
If not more.
Yeah, if not more. So the next is just a 1/2 inch ratchet. That was nice to have. It's a little bit bigger than just a 3/8 inch. So that was nice for not quite a breaker bar, but you could definitely get more leverage. Next is just your standard 3/8 inch ratchet, which obviously was very useful. Next is a small breaker bar to get in tight places. That was nice. Next is just a larger breaker bar where you can fit it. Room is definitely tight in the fender wells, so this wasn't used much, but it was helpful when we could fit it in the area we needed to. Next is just a brass hammer, especially for those bolts in the front and rear. Beating on them to get them out is nice, and the brass will actually bend or get damaged before a steel bolt will. So you definitely don't want to damage the heads of your bolts. So that was nice to have. Now I'll just go through all the sockets we ended up using. 12mm socket was used for the front top bolts. So there's 3 top bolts in the front. Those were all 3 of them were the 12mm socket. Next is a 14mm socket. This was used for the rear top bolts along with the 15. So on the coilovers that I took off, the top bolts were a 14, and the BC coilovers that I put on the top bolt was a 15. So it varies on exactly what coilovers you have. Next is a 17mm socket. This was used for the rear bottom bolts. And then I believe we also have a 17mm deep socket, which I think we used the deep socket on the bolt head and the shallow socket on the nut. So it was nice to have both of those. Next is a 19mm socket. This was used for the front bottom bolts, and we found out we didn't need a deep 19, just a shallow 19 for that. Next is a little elbow that you attach to your socket so you can bend it and get in tight places. And if we didn't have this, we would not have been able to do the rear because the A-arm got in the way of the rear bolts. So this was definitely a necessity, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without this little elbow. So that was very nice to have. And then, let's see, oops. Next is a 17mm standard wrench. This was used again for the rear. We had the socket on the bolt head and this the wrench on the nut. Same thing with the 19, but for the front we had the socket on the bolt head and the standard wrench on the nut. So you need both of those. Next are spinner wrenches to adjust your coilovers. I'm almost 99% sure that coilovers you order are not going to come preset. You're going to have to adjust them in some way. So this is the only way you can adjust coilovers. So they're very nice to have, and your coilovers should come with them. Next is just a standard the hell is this thing called?
It's a jack stand.
Jack stand. Next is just a standard jack stand. I had a brain fart for a second, but jack stand, obviously. And then we have a big jack over here, which is out of frame. You can't see it, but we just jacked the front up, put a jack stand on each side, did the front coilovers first, got it back on the ground, and then did the jack stands in the rear on each side. And yep, so that's all the tools you're going to need. I hope the video was helpful. Thank you guys very much.